All right, well, here we go. Most events are forgettable, not because the people running them don't care, but because they're optimizing for logistics instead of memory. I'm Jay Menashe, Senior Director of Strategy and Growth at Exhibitus, and this is Event Experience Experts. Every episode, I sit down with the creatives, strategists, and senior leaders who are raising the bar on what live brand experiences can actually do. If you're done accepting forgettable, you're in the right place. And now, let me introduce my first guest. This is Richard Sears, VP of Experiential at Studios, that is Exhibitus' Experiential and Creative Division. Before this, Richard spent years building immersive activations for some of the biggest names in entertainment and tech. Marvel, Netflix, Riot Games, Google, just to name a few, the kind of work where the client's expectations are sky high and the margin for a forgettable experience is zero. Now, he's the guy who has to take a great idea on a napkin and get it to survive contact with reality. The budget, the venue, the stakeholders who all want something different. I wanted Richard for episode 1 because he sits exactly where this show lives. The gap between what gets pitched and what actually gets remembered. Richard, welcome to the Event Experience Experts.
Thanks, Jay. Nice intro. You forgot the sphere, though.
I didn't want to talk about specific places you landed. Right. I kept those out of here for a reason.
Okay.
But
that was a big one.
So, I'd say it was a pretty well-known venue, to say the least. And, our common villain, which we're not going to name him because I already told you, I don't want to be flagged on any camera systems to get kicked out of my favorite place to go.
Right. Well, first of all, congratulations on the big Knicks win. That was a big deal.
You.
And you've got your
If everybody's lucky enough later on, I will stand up and show them my beautiful new t-shirt. And yes, I do wear New York gear every single day for the past week and a half, except for a couple occasions where we were meeting with potential clients. And even today, I actually met with a potential client. I'm like, hey, you want to see my shirt? I'm like a child. I need to show everybody.
No, man. That long of a drought, you deserve to be proud.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about the real stuff we're here for. So not only have you seen a lot of activations, you've obviously created a ton of activations. What would you say separates the ones that truly make an impact from the ones that you literally couldn't even tell somebody about 5 minutes after it ended?
I think the biggest thing for me is, and I've always kind of lived by this, is the emotional connection that they have to you, to people, the story it tells. That's really what it is. It's like if you can immerse somebody in that story and that connection and they feel that emotionally, that's the hook, right? That's the magic. Because I think a lot of activations, to the point of that question, they feel like we're being sold, right? It doesn't feel like it has any heart or emotional core to it, or it just feels like, oh, they're doing this activation to sell this product or to tell me about this film or whatever it may be that they're selling. But
I was actually talking about that earlier today because people are like, oh, I need this demo at this event, and whether it's internal or external, it's like, is it going to be a PowerPoint demo? Is it something they could have stayed at home in their pajamas, in their house with their family and never flown across the country to do? And it's like, even talking about that story first, it's like, people want to be a part of something, not really just on the outside listening to something. Even the old school formulaic standard keynote. It's like you're sitting there for how many hours just listening to someone preach at you versus getting them engaged with something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of keynotes, but I did get turned on to that world when I was at Sphere, because they would do a couple keynotes a year, and to see that twisted on its head and kind of get reinvented, in that media plane, in that large surface, and all the work and the complexity and the graphics that went into that. That was really interesting to me, because then I kind of saw this is what they used to do at these keynotes, which was stand up and there'd be a 20 by 30, LED behind them. And that was essentially it. It was really boring. So it's interesting to see that they've come in and kind of reinvented it there. I wonder if it will carry on to other venues.
What do you think? Obviously the Sphere itself is just such a unique architecture. What do you think is the biggest difference there? How are they really bringing that to life?
For keynotes?
Yeah, for an event in general, I guess more in your lane, you were obviously designing at the Atrium space, which is also a unique space in itself.
Yeah. Well, I think the atrium space is unlike any other space in any venue, meaning like you have 100,000 square feet to work with as a canvas, right? And then we do have digital surfaces there to work with that we can program and create content for. But the space itself, it just lends itself to create something unique and completely original, depending on, you know, whether it's Wizard of Oz or U2 or a corporate event like we did HPE. You know, their keynote, or Delta's 100th anniversary, and that was an event that we actually created set pieces for, in addition to content, in addition to, like, you know, kiosks that gave away swag and all that kind of thing to their employees. So I think it really, like, each one of those events had a different story to tell and a different mood about it, whether it was a celebration of 100 years like Delta, or it was HPE launching, you know, at CES, their kind of yearly keynote. So again, it goes back to what is the story being told and what's the connection you want to your audience.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
No.
I think we come to these, like, here's the checklist of things I need versus honing in on, like, what are you really trying to get accomplished here?
Right.
Yeah. One of the things at exhibits or studios we talk about, it's like kind of the differentiator, you know, surviving contact with reality. Can you walk me through, like, how you take it from the creative process through that survival, you know, from, like, say you I don't know if the whole napkin sketch is still a thing anymore, but how do you get from, like, that napkin sketch idea all the way through, like, the live event? Like, how do you make that survive?
With an activation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it varies, because sometimes, you know, like there's a project, I don't know if we want to talk names and stuff, but there's a project we just worked on at studios that essentially the brief was, here's the graphics for this, and we need a mobile activation, and they're going to play sports, and it's going to be 6 cities. Go. Like, okay. So, you know, sometimes it comes in lean and mean like that, which is great because it leaves all the creative decisions to us and the team, which we're fully capable of doing. Or sometimes it's extremely detailed, right? Like, I can think of, like, you know, a similar mobile experience that was for Amazon Studios, that they had a full brief that was quite large and ambitious, and it was for Hotel Transformania. And they knew they wanted to do certain takeovers of cities and guerrilla events, and also like pop-ups and a mobile activation. So they had all the complexity and all the layers of that campaign already kind of dialed in with their creative team. Because some of these, like some studios have a live events creative team as well as brands do, and some have one person, or they have a creative team, a creative director that's doing traditional digital media, and suddenly they're like, oh, we want to do an experiential component to the campaign. We don't have those people for it, so we're gonna lay that on you, and hopefully you guys can come through and figure that out for us. So we'll rely on their team to do it. So I think it depends on, you know, what their teams look like.
Yeah. Do you have a preference? Do you like this, like, hey, here's like a 1-sentence brief and you go figure it out, or do you like more dialed in?
I think it depends on, I mean, I like both. I do, I mean, there is something to be said about having that complete freedom of them, you know, just having this kind of minimal brief and you get to run with it. Sometimes you can run in the wrong direction. So that's the benefit of like working and collaborating with that team, is that you won't go in the wrong direction, right? So you're working with them from beginning. We're all collaborating in real time and figuring out, you know, what the campaign is and the complexity of it and the layers of it, versus where you're in a silo and you're doing it yourself. So I think there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation earlier. It's like, I typically will not spell out exactly what I want to see because I don't think of myself as a creative in any way. But it's like, hey, I have some ideas on activations. I've been doing this long enough and seen enough stuff. And then I get back this thing and I'm like, what am I even looking at? Like, this is nothing close to what I envisioned in my brain. And it's like, all right, I guess in this, you know, it really depends on the creatives you're working with as well. It's like how dialed in you want to give it to them versus like, hey, here's some creative freedom. I have like that 1-sentence brief, like, let me just see some cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And that it also is about trust. Like, we've all worked with designers or folks on our team where you can trust them and say, hey, here's what I want you to do. Here's the brief, you know, collaborate a bit and then go off and do your thing. they can go off and do their thing and come back and it's amazing, or they can go off and do their thing and go in a totally different direction than you thought they were. That could sometimes be amazing, and they can take it up a level that you didn't even think about, or it could be completely the wrong way. So I think that's the importance of that kind of real-time collaboration instead of working in silos, which that can turn deadly sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sure.
Do you find it harder to collaborate now that everything is in a remote world, or is it kind of the same? It's like, hey, we can just hop on the Zoom or Teams or whatever platform and just get it together.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I went through, as we all did, the period I don't know if I can name the agency, but I was at a certain agency at that time during COVID, and it was odd to have to work like that. And we all got accustomed to it. But I did notice there was a loss of, I don't know what it's like a loss of it's almost like you get a little insecure about your ideas. You know what I mean? Like if you're sitting in a room with people, you just can throw and spitball, versus if you guys are isolated and you're not working together in a room, you're coming up with these ideas on your own, and then you're bringing them into a call like we're on, and then you start to second guess yourself, and I don't think that's good. I think you want to be able to throw anything at the wall and see if it sticks. Bad ideas are fine, and not have that feeling of insecurity about creative ideas. So I think for me, that's a big difference. I really enjoy coming back to, we're in office. I really enjoy being in office and collaborating with my creatives in person as much as we can.
Yeah, I feel the same way. As much as, listen, I love remote work. I was driving an hour each way prior to the pandemic, and I don't miss that even a little bit, but I wish I was closer to the office. I really genuinely enjoy I'm in the job I'm in because I enjoy being around people. I also realize that open floor plans, I am the problem. It is not the other way around. I can jump into any conversation, and even if it's not supposed to be involved. Yeah, it's like I can't help myself. I always have a comment about something.
Right.
But yeah, no, I think it's especially, and this was not even supposed to be one of my questions, but the whole remote work-life balance, it's like, yes, there are huge benefits depending on what level of your career you're in. If you're early in your career and you're working remote, that feels impossible to me and so lonely. Not even the feedback loop, but it's like, how do you build relationships in a company if you're cool, I'm staring at a screen, and to a certain extent, you can build relationships, but it's the serendipitous moments are always my favorite, whether I'm at an event or in an office.
Right. Yeah, and I think the issue is some of the younger folks that came in during COVID, let's say you got a job at a creative agency during COVID, that's all you've really known, right? Because some of these agencies, they haven't even come back. I mean, some are 3 and some are full-time, but the people are still working remote. And they've never experienced that. So I feel for them, because I'm sure it's got to be isolating and lonely, and they're not getting the full experience of sitting in a room and creating something together.
And this is why we hear people becoming best friends with AI agents, because it's hey, that person's always going to talk to me. They're always going to.
That's a whole other topic. I just recently read, I don't know if you saw that New York Times article about yesterday, but there's all this data that they've been tracking for people who are working remotely and the effects it's having on us. Not only the effects on the work, but the effects on our psychological well-being. It's not good.
I can see that. No, I can definitely see that.
No.
All right, I'm going to get myself back.
That's depressing.
Yeah, a little bit. So back on the creative topic. So you obviously have worked in a lot of different venues and environments. What's the most constrained or hardest environment you've ever had to work in? And, what did that constraint force you to do that you've really never thought to try or do otherwise?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I wish I had more time to ponder. Because we've all been in difficult situations and you try to make the best out of it. But I think I would definitely have to say sphere, just because, you're pushed to a level I've never been pushed before. And I think that's by design. I think the people that come there, they're all unicorns and they've all been through all kinds of experiences. And that's probably the reason that they're chosen. And we were in the midst of creating something new with Wizard of Oz, so that there was uncharted territory, not only with the film, which I wasn't really part of, but the 4D effects, and then my responsibility, the atrium. But when you saw everybody doing what they're doing, wow, they're doing this film with AI, and it's never been done before, and it's never been done to this complexity and this size screen and this venue, because it's the only venue like it in the world. We have to raise our work to that level. So everybody, and then you see the 4D effects, and you're like, good Lord, these men just created a tornado that feels like a tornado in the bowl. We've got to raise to this level, because if the guests go in and see this film and have this experience, and then they come out in the atrium and they're like, right? It's got to be wow. They have to be wowed when they come out. So I think that puts you in that place of like insecurity, anxiety, excitement, all of it, but your brain is firing like nonstop for 16 months on how to make this thing amazing, which is extremely stressful and taxing, but at the same time, it's extremely exciting. And we, so I don't know if that answers your question, but it was a very demanding atmosphere for that reason, and then also, reasons that you and I know is the leadership, right? And
yes,
there's
not
we didn't have a typical like CEO that was just like overseeing things and paying for things. I mean, he has his hands in every detail, and that's probably what makes it successful. Some would argue maybe not, but I think most people would argue probably that's the reason it's so successsuccessful.
Yeah,
so,
I'll argue against that, but yeah.
No, I mean as far as like the vision of it, because I have to say, it was really his vision for a lot of those things that we produced.
Well, and his expertise has definitely always been, at least as long as I've remembered, music venues. He turned the Garden into a music venue, and I would actually say it took away from it being a sports venue, even if it's the most, world's most famous arena.
Yeah.
There was something about the Rangers games, and you couldn't argue this a week and a half ago when the Garden literally exploded multiple times. But there's something about the way the acoustics are now that it doesn't feel as loud as it did. And maybe that's just because I've been there so many times, and I was a kid, and it's like everything is different when you're a kid, and everything is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. But yeah, no, he's definitely got an eye for that type of thing. I wanted to ask one follow-up question, because you said you had a 16-month timeline, which in our world it's like, I would say that's 15 to 20 times longer than we usually get to create something. No. Do you think that makes it harder, easier, or I guess maybe a little?
Well, it didn't originally start at 16 months. I think it originally started around, let me see, I think it was like 6 months, maybe 8 months. But we kept pushing because the film wasn't ready, right? So they had to keep pushing. We pushed, I think, 2-3 times. So that extended the timeline. So I think all in, it was probably 14 months. But yeah, that was part of the reason. I mean, and it thankfully every time we pushed, that was such a relief for us, because we were behind, and we were like, we were trying to figure out like how we're going to pull this off.
Yeah. You were almost thankful for the film team to be behind, because it helped you out.
Oh, very thankful. Yes. And we actually. Yeah, oddly enough, like we really had it together. So at the end, we were on time and on schedule and on budget, which was nice for our part.
Yeah, that certainly helps. Makes everybody a little bit at ease for the moment.
For sure. Yeah.
One of the elements you told me about from Wizard of Oz, and maybe it was a different experience at the atrium at Sphere, but you were able to not only design for a crowd, but also like the individuals. How do you go about thinking that through? Because we're looking at these events. We're typically designing for 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 people, but you also have to have that impact on the individual person. Like, how do you think that through?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. I mean, I think I learned a lot of that when we did Avengers Station in Vegas, because that was 12,000 square feet. That was the biggest kind of experience I had done up to that time. There was a trial and error period there where that took us about a year to put that together and build that out. And we did a soft open, and I think that soft open was highly beneficial to me, because I learned about how people really interact in groups, meaning not, activations, you get a couple hundred people, right? Maybe 1,000 if you're lucky. This was thousands of people coming through on a daily basis, and a lot of people interacting with stuff. So there has to be a certain robustness. But I think to your point, like, what's the connection, right? And the connection here was the storytelling. Obviously the IP exists and it's beloved. So there's already that emotional connection people have to Avengers. But then we took it a step further and created a story there out, within the Avengers IP, but also that people weren't just like, I'm just looking at movies, right? Like this is actually a story that I'm immersed in, that I'm part of. I've been briefed by Maria Hill. I'm going through the experience. I'm feeling like I'm one of the Avengers. That was the goal. Mm-hmm. So I think that took us a minute to dial that in and figure that out, and then ultimately to see how people interact with each of these components and layers of the activation. We had to pivot some stuff and change some things accordingly. A lot of times you don't have that luxury. We certainly didn't have it at Sphere, but it helped me learn. Like it also it's almost like film. Like you make a film, you really want to test it, right? Like a lot of people will be like, and I've made the mistake of like, nah, this film's perfect. It's my vision. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. It's a mistake, right? Because you're not making the film for yourself. You're making it for an audience. So I think we always have to kind of remind ourselves that we're not doing this for ourselves. A lot of creatives, our egos can get in the way and think, no, I know it's perfect. We're not touching this. And you lose sight of who we're actually making it for.
That is a very familiar. I used to always go through these RFP processes. It's like, all right, cool. We met with them. We got all our information. Let's get our design done. Let's get the budget done. Send it in. Definitely going to win this. And over the last, it probably took me too long, and maybe I'm a little slow to figure this out, but it's like, I will not go through a process with a new client that I don't know well without, hey, I'm going to need to meet with you at least like two, 3 times in between beginning to end. Obviously we do I have a chemistry culture thing, got to make sure they're not, I won't curse, not mean people. But then it's like the most important step is honestly that preliminary design review, because yes, the creative is obviously perfect in your brain, and I agree. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. They're going to love this. But it's like, I'll never forget there was this one process where we weren't going to do this. I was able to convince our creative director. I'm like, hey, let's just show them, like, see what they think. Their CMO joined the call, gave us 2 very specific pieces of feedback that almost 180'd our design. And this went from an RFP process where they're like, hey, we're just doing this because we have to. We're like, all right, well, it's a big enough budget. Let's take a swing anyway. And we won. And it was because of that in between, like, let's check the creative. Because, yes, of course, we know we're the most brilliant minds and we're going to get this perfect. But the reality is it's so subjective to not have that in-between step and test things out. It's like, it's just a miss if you can do it.
For sure, yeah. And that review, with fresh eyes, because you and your team and, and the teams I work with, you're so immersed in that, and your pencil's down and, your eyeballs on it, you forget how it lives and breathes in the world. So it's nice to have somebody from the outside look at it and go, oh, this doesn't work, or that doesn't make sense, or whatever's not clicking. That's crucial and so much needed, and I respect that. It's taken me a while to learn that part of it.
Yeah. Sure. Listen, our egos dictate a lot of things in our lives. And as we get older and realize our ego is getting in the way, you start to push back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this, I don't know if we can keep this in, but this was an interesting thing I just witnessed recently. Speaking of like amazing artists, I saw a screening of a film called Digger with Tom Cruise about a month ago that Alejandro Inarritu directed, who did Revenant, 21 Grams, Babel, Birdman, amazing director. And I think, I was like, wow, this guy's like screening this film to get feedback. That was what the screening was for, is to like see if it's working. He's still doing it, right? And this guy's a master, and he's still like wanting people's feedback. His ego is not in the way. And from that screening, because I know the editor, that's how I was invited, is, they ended up cutting 15 minutes out of the film after that. But I think, that just goes to prove, like, we think we know, but we don't until an audience sees it, right, and responds to it. For sure.
And in those moments, I'm often actually not even looking at the creative whatsoever. I will minimize that part of the screen and just look at people's faces because I want to see their reactions to it. It's because if you see them sitting there and like blank stare on their face, maybe a little bit like our meeting yesterday, where it's like, all right, we got to do something different here. Like, let's just spice things up and say some crazy stuff. But yeah, that feedback, it's like, again, it's all subjective. Like, it's art in the end of the day. And what you love, what I love is going to be different.
Yeah, that meeting was painful. I was thinking about that. I was thinking like there was no story there. That was a good example because there was really no story being told in that meeting. It was just a meeting with no agenda. Sometimes those can be good, sometimes they can be bad. But I think it goes to the point of like you need a story. You need
Yeah,
them to
even if
hinge
it's
on.
just that introductory meeting, it's like, and I actually,
Yeah.
it's funny, and maybe this will become, we'll find out.
Yeah.
But I thought about reaching out to the main person we were talking to that set that whole thing up and be like, hey, this felt a little awkward. Like,
Yeah.
just send a little note and like, I don't know, we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Back on target. So
That's
now
agency
these,
life, though. A lot of people will relate to that.
yeah, that's for sure. So these days, speaking of agency life, timelines are shorter, budgets are tighter. Where do you see event budgets being wasted most consistently? And the second part, what would you do with that money instead?
Um, yeah, these are good questions, Jay. You're
Thanks.
doing good here. Yeah, I think the waste, it's weird because every event's so different. I feel like, for the things that we do, activations and experiences, I don't feel like there is a lot of waste. I would see a lot of waste like with live events and, like keynotes and user conferences, but I wasn't really part of those. But I've been at agencies where those were being done, and I would see a lot of waste that at least I thought it was waste over there with like, especially with, like concepting and going back and forth with the client. That seems to take, like in an agency, they just constantly are in that back and forth and meetings and meetings and meetings and back and forth and deciding what they want to do and the creative and the concepting around it. That seemed to be, I've noticed like there was not one person that was standing up and going, this is the path forward. This is where we're going, Whereas like on activations, you have to have that voice. You have to have that creative individual that's like, this is the way. If it's not, let's pivot and collaborate and figure out what the way is. But I find when there's like these huge teams, and I think that's what it is for some of these events, there's like so many people involved on the client side and on the agency creative side, because there's so many components to live events that it just gets really muddy and messy. And that just burns time.
And time is money. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You're big into incorporating technology into experiences. I mean, I think that is a really great way to make a story much more impactful. What technology or I guess format would you say is underused right now?
Yeah, definitely not LEDs.
No, I don't think you can go into a single booth without at least an LED.
I'm happy to see that VR is no longer mentioned in any briefs because that was a disaster.
Yes.
Gosh.
Back when I had hair, I wouldn't put those things on. I'm like, I can't mess up my 6 strands over here.
Yeah, and the throughput and just everything, hygiene, on and on and on. Not to mention then ultimately the content. But yeah, I think underused technology I'd probably say maybe AR, just because we haven't really cracked it yet, and we've tried. I think the other one is generative AI. Like, I think that's really interesting, and we could dive further into both of those. But on generative AI, because we played with this at Sphere, and I know they're still playing with it with like live for concerts, to have real-time generative content, which is super interesting, that would react to the crowd. It would have cameras and sensors. So that's interesting. But I like to take that into experiences too, where everybody's experience is unique to them and how they're feeling, how they're looking, how they're interacting with the technology, whether it's an LED wall and sensors and cameras. But what you're getting is directly personal to you, if that makes sense. So that technology, that technology is really, I'd say that's probably the most exciting technology. I don't think we figured out how to crack it yet or what to use it for.
Yeah, and you may not know this, but my family is a bunch of Disney fanatics, minus myself. I just have to go because, I'm part of this family. And there are certain rides that really play into that a lot. And we did a cruise last April, and it was super cool. If you sat at certain tables, like the walls would come alive and start talking to you. And, it's generic, but it doesn't feel that way in the moment. It feels like they're actually engaging with you. That family right at that table, and it's super cool. And it does. I mean, shoot, I'm talking about this a year and a half later, and it was such a little thing. So no, I think that I think as it develops, it's easier to work with. Similar to AR in that matter. It's like I'm also surprised AR hasn't taken off because it's so accessible now. With any device that you use, you can tap into it. And it's like you don't even need necessarily an app anymore, which is
I think what that is people don't want to be taken out of, like when you, like your perfect example is when you were at Disney with your family. You don't want to, in that moment, we're glued to these all day, have to like pick that up and look at it and interact with it, even though it could be an amazing interaction. I think it's just like, when I'm at Disneyland or a movie or an experience or a theme park, I don't want to mess with my phone. I want to be immersed, and I don't want to do the work. So I think that's work for an audience to then, you know what I mean? So, but I think if like, the Mario, I don't know if you've been to Super Mario World here, but you put on those goggles, right? And you get in a little buggy and you have AR and you can see all this cool stuff, the cool world around you. That's a really good example that I think a successful use of AR.
Yeah, I think, and Meta Glasses has really brought that to the forefront, I'd say. But I think even Apple's working on some kind of glasses device, which they
Vision Pro was not so successful.
But like something a little bit not as terrible looking, and it looks like you're wearing a helmet. But maybe the next iteration will be the one.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we keep waiting. It's been years and years and trying to figure that out.
Yeah. All right.
But for me, I think generative AI is the most exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating, and AI, we could talk about that as its own episode in itself.
For sure.
But
how
I have one last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Who in the industry is doing work that you think deserves more attention?
As an agency, or because now I'm going to get myself in trouble if they're a competitor of ours.
No, an individual creative director, someone that you consider, whether it's a mentor to you or someone you've been like, that's a cool project, I wish I had that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I really like Meow Wolf. It's very inspiring to me. I know it's gotten weird lately and they've become a little more corporate. There's somebody that I always follow and watch their work and enjoy the work, even sometimes if I don't understand it. Like I don't, the Mart in Vegas, I've gone through it 3 times. I still don't understand the storyline, but does it really matter? I don't think so, because I love it and I have fun. It's like a movie that you don't quite understand, and you just like the experience and the mood of it, right? Yeah. So for me, I love their work. The one in Santa Fe is amazing. Obviously, I haven't been to the one I think in Denver, but
they're all over the place.
Yeah, their work is always intriguing and definitely interesting for me.
Nice. Yeah, we did the haunted, I forget what it's called, the haunted one in Vegas. That's Meow Wolf, but it was interesting.
Omega Mart.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And it felt like you were walking through a movie set, and then these people would jump out with like a chainsaw, because one of the scenes was Chainsaw Massacre, and scare the crap out of you, and right. It was super interesting.
Yeah, you know who else actually does really, now I'm starting to click a bit, but this is interesting. I don't really know these guys, but there's this company called Vibey. I don't know if you've heard of them. No. They were responsible for doing all the pop-ups for the residencies at Sphere. So they would do them over in the Venetian. And they did one for U2, they did one for the Dead, they did one for the Eagles. They do them for every band. But the one they did for the Eagles was amazing. And I don't know how many people went to it that are listening, but they recreated like the Hotel California. But it was like a full-scale Spanish-style hotel, that you walked in that felt historical and lived in. And there was these really cool interactive doors you would open up and you would see different things. That were within the story of the song, and it was kind of like haunting and interesting. Anyway, their work, because I was in Vegas and I would see it all the time, while working there. I was like, wow, these guys, they're really thinking this through. They aren't just doing a pop up and not thinking about it. They're really telling a story here that's interesting and unique. So yeah, I like their work.
Nice. I'll have to check them out. It sounds fascinating. Yeah. I'm still mad at myself that I have yet to experience anything at Sphere. But
God, what are you doing? Yeah.
Not enough. Not enough.
Yeah.
I go to sporting events when I'm in town instead. I go to see the Golden Knights.
Right. I understand. Yeah. No, they Wizard of Oz is extended like a whole another year, so you have plenty of time.
Yeah, fair.
To go do it. Yeah.
All right, Richard. Well,
that's it.
You've said it all. You've said it all.
Have I? I don't feel like I have. But okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you and I could easily talk for another half an hour, but we're not going to do that.
That went fast.
It did actually, and I'm planning. Yeah, this will be the first one going live, and let me do my outro and make it official. Well, you said it all. If you walked away with one thing you'll use and didn't just nod along, we did our job. Event Experience Experts drops every week. Subscribe wherever you listen, and if you want to see this beautiful mug, watch us on YouTube. I'm Jay Menashe, and I'll see you next time.